Good evening, I am Ibrahim Sani and this is Market Talk. And of course, today we have on the show Jose Miguel Porraz, the Managing Director of Fonterra Brands. Jose, thanks for joining me. Let's start with the business of Fonterra. What do you guys do?
Thank you, Ibrahim, for giving me the opportunity to join you today. So Fonterra, it's a cooperative, which means we are owned by 10,000 New Zealand families that do dairy farming for life. So basically, we collect the milk from their farms every day. We process these 23 billion liters of milk every year, and then we take them to nourish over 1 billion people all over the world.
Let's talk about the size of the business here in Malaysia, and because of course you're the MD of Singapore as well, let's talk about that as well. How many people do you employ? What kind of business size are we talking about here?
So Fonterra has an operation here in Malaysia that controls or represents about 700 people full-time employed in Malaysia. We've got 2 manufacturing facilities, and we've got 1 headquarters office and 1 shared service office.
Of course, these 2 manufacturing plants, they're located in, one of them is in Johor, if I'm mistaken, right?
Both are here in around KL area.
Okay.
And both provide the domestic market, but we also produce to export markets.
Including to Singapore?
Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, as far away as Mauritius or Hong Kong. So there's a multiple of markets that are served out of Malaysia.
Why do you think that is the case? Why is Malaysia acting like a hub for these regional markets?
Historically, Malaysia has been a core market for Fonterra and remains so for a number of reasons. First, geographically, the location of Malaysia is very strategic for Fonterra. Fonterra being in New Zealand, we need to take our products to the world, and Malaysia is like the stop point for that process. So we make about 23 billion liters of milk. Half of them stop in Malaysia before they reach their final destination.
And this is extremely interesting because when you say it reaches in Malaysia first before it reaches the international destination, let's talk about the supply chain, right? Because it originates from New Zealand and it comes all the way to Malaysia, and of course it will be exported regionally. How do you make sure that the nutrition and the level of safety in terms of the milk being transferred from point A to point B is ensured?
So Fonterra is the largest processor of dairy in the world, and as such has built capabilities over years that are really, really sound to protect the safety of the product, to ensure the nutrition, as you say, when it reaches consumers. So we have a number of tests, millions of tests that actually are conducted every year right at the farm gate, before the cows actually are collected the milk, before the milk goes into the milk tanker, before it goes into the factory, throughout the supply chain, to ensure the integrity of every stage point. We are monitoring the temperature control right at the farm gate, vats to the factory, including the containers as they go into the port and until they reach their final destination. So we do have very strong and sound processes to ensure the integrity of the product, and that's why Fonterra is the most trusted source of dairy all over the world.
And of course, with safety regulations in place, do you think that the country is having too much in terms of regulations in managing this kind of industry? Would you like to see lesser regulations or more?
When you look at Malaysia, any ranking that exists in the World Economic Forum, ease of doing business, the transparency, international in terms of corruption perceptions, Malaysia stands out as a really limelight across the region. Probably second only to Singapore across all of those ratings, but well ahead of all of the other markets in the region. So that's, again, one of the other reasons why we see Malaysia as a hub for us, because of the certainty that the government, the laws have created, plus the very progressive governments that we've had in Malaysia that are driving free trade across the region that allows that integration from Malaysia to the rest of the world.
Some macroeconomic numbers have come in, particularly after the Prime Minister has announced the budget a few weeks back. On the issue of headline inflation, it has steadily gone up, particularly in terms of food inflation. Do you think that essential food products like milk has gone up steadily over the past few years? Do you think this is the case?
So when you look at international commodity prices, and there is a global dairy trade index which shows what are the prices of base commodities of dairies, there has been a very high increase over the last 12 months. So the price of butter has gone more than 100%. The price of whole milk powder has gone over 40%. The price of cheddar cheese has gone more than 40%. So there is a lot of pressure in terms of both the demand and the supply globally that are driving this increase in prices. As Fonterra, we are really driving to absorb and offset most of those increases through internal efficiencies, through driving faster and leaner supply chain, better manufacturing processes, so that we can mitigate the impact that that has on our final consumers.
And of course, while Fonterra is leading the market in terms of supplying dairy products to the local market here, do you think that there is inherent need for you to keep up with the rising prices? Is there a possibility for you to manage that kind of rising inflationary prices by reducing prices at your own end, at the same time eating into the margins?
So again, we've got the higher commodity prices, we've got exchange rate also putting pressure, but we are driving strong efficiencies in our manufacturing process. So we just recently finish an expansion of our Susumas factory, which manufactures milk powders, a couple of months ago. And as a result of that, we are bringing new volumes of production from the Philippines into Malaysia, from other markets into Malaysia, so that we increase our production in Malaysia as we export. That helps drive efficiency and reduce some of our conversion costs. The same as we're looking at bringing some of our hub of procurement into Malaysia, that helps us drive cost efficiencies in Malaysia. Rethinking how we reach consumers in smarter or faster ways, that also helps us offset some of those price increases without putting a lot of pressure into the final consumer, which we know are looking for affordability, but they're also looking for better nutrition and for products that taste great. And in that regard is one of the things that we are really driving through our product innovation portfolio in Malaysia.
Of course, Jose, we'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll discuss more about the distribution methods of Fonterra. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Market Talk. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Today I have with me Jose Miguel Porraz, the Fonterra Managing Director of Malaysia and Singapore. And just before we left off, we were talking about the improving efficiencies within your operational system. And of course, the idea of having a retail business like this is on improving distribution channels. A lot of your competitors are now trying to advance their distribution channels by going online, trying to diversify the sales and marketing strategy, employing direct sales, for instance. Are all these methods of any interest to Fonterra?
So we definitely are looking at how do we reach our consumers faster and better, and in some instances looking at direct distribution to their homes, to subscription models through e-commerce, partnering with the largest platforms that are available. That's an area that continuously we challenge the boundaries and trying to be ahead of the curve, given our leadership position that we have in the Malaysian market through our brands.
And is this a clear signal that you are opting for some of these methods, particularly in the e-commerce sector?
Absolutely. When we look at what we defined in our 5 must-win battles for Malaysia, one of them is reaching consumers better, and that is a substantial investment in our e-commerce digital platforms, not only for shopping, but also for engaging and reaching consumers and help them make a better education on the brands that they choose to bring home and support their families with.
There are a host of competitors for Fonterra, and it ranges from big companies like Nestle, for instance, to small but very enterprising firms like Holstein Milk, operating out of Johor, going to Singapore. They are betting big in the e-commerce sector. Nestle, for instance, has pledged R500 million in terms of improving the e-commerce delivery. Holstein Milk is now directly delivering straight into the Singaporean market. That's why their farm is in Johor Bahru in particular. Do you think that they have a competitive edge over you guys in terms of trying to use new distribution methods and trying to get to the consumer better?
So I think the competitive advantage does not come only from a supply chain perspective. Our view is that it comes from investing in new ways of reaching consumers, but not fundamentally losing sight of what consumers are looking, which is affordable products with great taste and that they can trust that they will bring the best nutrition for their families. And our brands clearly stand for that in Malaysia. When you look at our brands like Fernleaf, is the #1 full cream milk powder in the market. When you look at a brand like Anlene, is the #1 most trusted brand for adults in Malaysia. When you look at a brand like Anmum, Materna is the #1 brand for pregnant moms in Malaysia. And continuously our brands are pushing the boundary into what is better nutrition. So when you look at the range of products that we are offering, we have the broadest number of brands that have achieved the Healthy Choice logo from the Ministry of Health, because we've been consistently removing sugar from our products to the point that Anmum Essential is the first and only brand in the market that has no added sugar. And again, by being very vocal about what's relevant from a consumer point of view, now that they're becoming much more self-aware of the importance of driving healthy eating habits from an early age, our brands are achieving growth well ahead of the category and other competitors.
The Ministry of Health has been quoted as saying that the #1 killer for Malaysia for today is not any serial killer out there, but actually it's non-communicable diseases, and diabetes is of course central towards the conversation of improving the healthcare of Malaysia. Do you think that as a company like yourself, you have a moral obligation in terms of educating the mass market into a correct way of eating, having the best dietary requirement? What is your role in trying to improve consumer education in terms of a better balanced diet?
Ibrahim, this is a fundamental point. When you look at Malaysia, the non-communicable diseases are at a stage that is really alarming, and it is concerning from my perspective as a citizen, but also looking at Fonterra. When you have rates of type 2 diabetes that are double the world average at 18%, that is really critical that we, all Malaysians, need to step up and do something different. As a consumers, we need to read labels better, we need to prepare more food at home, and we need to try to remove added sugars from all parts of our diet. As a manufacturer, we need to be able to provide that choice to our consumers. And again, that's why when we launched Anmum Essential, that was the first step. We launched Anlene Heart Plus just in May, and that is pushing the boundaries in supporting nutrition for reducing high cholesterol, high blood sugar, and high blood pressure, but also we remove sugar for all added sugar from that product. This month we are launching a new formulation for Anmum Materna that has removed all of the added sugar as well. So consistently we've been removing the main drivers that create a risk or increase the risk for non-communicable diseases. So absolutely, it is our responsibility to provide better nutrition to the people that are trusting our brands to bring to their homes.
The CDC has classified sugar as a form of addiction, and because of this, consumer brands, I'm not saying yours, but consumer brands in general, tend to put more sugar into their product lineup because that would help in terms of customer retention for buying the subsequent products in the future. Do you think that cutting sugar from your product line will result in a negative consequence for people to be buying your products over and over again?
I think in the short term, sugar tastes nice and is enjoyable and it creates short-term pleasure. But long term, again, people are becoming more aware. The government is doing a great job of driving the awareness of non-communicable diseases. I believe it is a competitive advantage for the long-term success of Fonterra that we've invested in reducing and eliminating sugar from our brands. that really sets us apart. Consumers then trust our brands because we're doing what's right for them, even if it compromises a bit on the taste. And that said, our brands are able to achieve really good taste profile, in most instances achieving 60% preference over competitive brands. So we've been able to work around taste management without the sugar, which is a really strong advantage from our perspective.
Jose, we'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll discuss more on the consumer behavior going forward. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Market Talk. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Today I have with me Fonterra Managing Director of Malaysia and Singapore, Jose Miguel Porraz. Jose, we were talking a little bit about the ability for you guys to manage your taste tests and going forward. I think this is the reason why I like interviewing retail companies, because they strike at the heart of the Malaysian consumer. It's not, you know what's going on in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of consumer purchases. What would be the sentiment right now in terms of consumer purchasing behavior that we can learn going towards the end of the year?
So what we're seeing with consumers, there is a prevalence to do what's right for the family. We continue to see Malaysian consumers in particular being more cognizant and discerning on the reading labels. Particularly on the point of sugar, there is around 57 different words that people can use to describe sugar. Okay. Fructose would be one, sucrose would be another one. Sometimes when some companies call no added sugar, is not sugar in specific, but there is some of the other variants available. Consumers are now much more accustomed to reading through that and picking up some brands that are not being straightforward or truthful in their nutritional portfolio. And I think that is a really good step from their side. So we're seeing a much more educated Malaysian consumer. We're seeing a consumer that is willing to pay for brands that offer the right level of nutrition, particularly when it goes to a family brand that is enjoyed by everyone in the family. So they're willing to delay some of the investment in some of the larger goods like a TV or a car, but they are really willing to invest on food for their family. So that's literally, when you look at the budget of a family, after paying for rent, the largest part of their budget goes for food, whether it's in home or out of home. So that puts us as a food company in a unique role that we have a higher responsibility than everybody else to provide that better nutrition and drive affordability to support the budgets of these families that are trying to do what's right for them and their kids.
Knowing this is the case, are you now segmenting your customers to a point where there is a need for you to present some brands that services the upper mass affluent or the high net worth kind of income family? Is there a need for you guys to start separating the brands for the mass market and the not so mass market, the more affluent market?
So generally, when we look at the market, the mass market is the one that needs the better nutrition the most, and is one that we see a large opportunity for support. So that's definitely an area that we want to serve, and our brands, being number one in their specific segments, need to be appealing to a very broad base of consumers. Mm-hmm. And again, one of the nice things of food is that it really cuts across economic deciles quite thoroughly. Everybody wants food that is enjoyable, that you can enjoy as a group, with your family, with your friends. And in that regards, the functionality that they're required of the food is quite consistent regardless of the race, or regardless of the age group, or regardless of the demographic specifics. So that's one of the interesting things, that we are able to really understand what's the insight for a specific segment, then that cuts across quite well. Like, again, if you take an example, that one of our brands that we launched here, mm-hmm. That was created in Malaysia, Anmum, we saw that there was a need for folate. Today, only 3% of pregnant women have enough folate in their diet. Mm-hmm. So that's still a very critical need. So Anmum Materna provides that. And that need is there regardless of your income, regardless of your race, regardless of your geographic location in Malaysia. So those needs that are very, very fundamental and cut across are the ones that we're trying to serve to be able to have that broad base.
The leading position that you have in the market enables you to present these kind of information that you have in terms of research. Do you think that there is a time and a place for Fonterra to present these kind of studies for the betterment of the consumer understanding of the dietary requirements?
Absolutely, and we work quite closely with government offices, with different universities to try to make this as broadly available as possible. You're right, we do a lot of research. We invest over 100 million New Zealand dollars in research every year around nutrition, around milk. And a lot of that is shared, available to the public. We work very closely with the Ministry of Health, with different ministries to really drive what's important for the well-being of Malaysians' families, whether it's improving the level of calcium, whether it's improving the level of folate, whether it's reducing the level of sugar, whether it's improving the balancing of the diet, and also looking for an active lifestyle, which is fundamental for achieving the goals that Malaysia has set forward for 2030.
Of course, Jose, we're at the end of the year. What can we expect from your company towards this period, and of course, perhaps something that we can look forward to in the early half of next year?
So we'll continue to grow. So if we look at the rate of growth that we've achieved in the region as Fonterra, in our latest financial statements, we only disclosed as an Asia region, we grew 10% in volume. So there is a huge demand for our products in Malaysia and in the region. And that comes from constant product innovation. So we launch new products in May, we're launching product news this month, next month will be another launch of new products. So we continue to be at the forefront of consumer needs and addressing them better than any other competitor in the market. So that's what they can continue to trust Fonterra, to be the best source of dairy nutrition in the world, that brings the best form of nutrition targeted for the Malaysian needs, specifically formulated, and that is affordable for enjoying every day in your family.
Jose, thanks very much for joining us today. I've been speaking to Jose Miguel Porraz, the Fonterra Managing Director of Malaysia and Singapore. And that's it for this episode of Market Talk. Send us all your feedback on all our social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Follow us there at 501 Awani. And remember to listen to this interview on your podcast. Simply search for Astro Awani wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ibrahim Sani. Thanks for watching and goodbye.